All right, new year, new me. I'm just kidding. It's more like new year, old me, same old hoarding habits. Hello, all of my otaku friends. My name is Profitaku, and welcome back to my channel for another manga video. It is a new year, and it's time for a fresh start. It's time for the annual Manga Unhaul. And also, I need to pay off the $2,000 car bill I got last week. I got rid of over 175 volumes. What didn't make the cut, and why did I get rid of it? Well, stay tuned. Let's start with one of the most beloved Shonen Jump series out there. A very difficult decision for me, volumes 1 to 26 of Dr. Stone and the spin-off one-shot. So why am I getting rid of Dr. Stone? The easy answer is the ending. The ending was written in a way that makes the rereadability of this series just completely out the window. I have no desire to see the journey or the antics of Senku and the cast of characters in this prehistoric world just because I don't want to be let down again, and that's why this series has to go. But with that being said, this is definitely worth a read, so I highly recommend you check this out on the Shonen Jump app, or if you do get it physically, just go ahead and read it once through and then you can offload it to someone else. Next up here from the catalog of Shuzo Ishimi, we have volumes 1 to 5 of Welcome Back Alice. So I read through volume 5 physically, I finished the last 2 volumes digitally. I enjoyed this series. I thought it was a very different manga, very interesting to think about, but definitely not one to reread. There are some problems with the way characters are written and the way the story is progressing and the way that the message is trying to be stated, but with the convolution of the story and the direction that Oshimi takes it, it just is a little bit weird in my opinion. Next up is a classic Shonen Jump series. I decided to get rid of volumes 1 to 35 of Shaman King in these omnibuses, as well as the first 2 volumes of the sequel series Shaman King Flowers. Now don't get me wrong, I gave this series a chance. I read up through 26 volumes of this series and I thoroughly enjoyed it, even though the beginning is just god awful to get through. But at some point, maybe last year or maybe it was even the year before in 2022, I stopped reading this series. I read some other things and I had no desire to come back to it, continue it, and see what the ending was all about. But I think this is one I definitely want to finish. I had enjoyed every single arc, how it was progressing. It was getting more and more intense, and I want to finish this online, but with my feelings about Shonen Jump, how they're kind of like a one and done kind of read, this is one I definitely don't need to keep in my collection. Here's one that I read recently that everybody was hyped for, and I read the first 2 omnibuses. I was like, that's it, I can't take it anymore. We have Homunculus volumes 1 to 4. Lots of people love this 10 volume series, and I was one of them for the first 2 volumes, and then I got to volume 3 and then volume 4, and I was like, oh my god, what the hell is this? It was just so disgusting and so weird, and I was just so turned off by the way the main character was written. I felt like it got away from everything that the first 2 volumes established. I was really intrigued with the story, but then it just did that and I was like, oh my god. So yeah, I have no desire to pick up the rest of the series, and I definitely don't have a desire to reread the series, even if I did try to finish it. So yeah, this one has to go. Here's one that I did not even get to. We have Kurosaki Corpse Delivery Service volumes 1 to 9 in these 3 volume omnibuses. So yes, you can see it is plastic wrapped, and the reason why is because I never got to it, and I don't have any desire to read this. I don't even know why I picked this up in the first place. I am not a big horror person at all whatsoever. I think I had a friend message me and say, hey, you should pick this up, it's pretty interesting, and then I did because I'm on the hype train of getting influenced by other people. Then I never read it. It's been sitting on my shelf for like a year and a half, and I was like, well, I'm never gonna get to it with the way my collection is growing, so forget it. Let me know down in the comments if that's gonna be a big mistake and I should actually try to read this thing. Next here is a short Shonen Jump series from a beloved mangaka, the same mangaka as Spy Family. We have Tista volumes 1 and 2. This series is set in New York City following Tista, a serial killer trying to find justice in this really grim underworld. It was just so badly written. The characters were forgettable at best. The story was just all over the place, and it just was not very satisfying at all. It was just so shallow and so confusing at the same time. So yeah, Tista was one I didn't really care for, and I'm offloading it. Here's a series that started off strong and then just kind of took a nosedive. We have Crossplay Love Otaku X Punk volumes 1 to 5. I thought this series started off really interesting. It follows 2 guys who cross-dress as girls, but then the boys like the other girls, so then they dress as girls and hang hang out as friends, and then it's just a very convoluted relationship. It's a very funny rom-com series, but where this series took its downfall was the introduction of all the side characters in volumes 3 and 4. It created this tree of friendships and drama that just made no sense, and it took away from the main story and the main relationship. Here's one that's kind of breaking my heart to get rid of. It was really tough, but I was like, you know, this is just doesn't have enough context for me to reread it, and that is volumes 1 to 4 complete of Miss Miazan Would Love to Get Closer to You. This is a wonderful series. I think I gave it a 7.5, 8 out of 10. It was very, very well done. Really interesting school life episodic manga following this guy who's a delinquent and this girl who's a preppy girl, and they get into this unsuspecting friendship and relationship. Super, super cute, but you know, there was nothing about it that made me go, wow, this is just an amazing series I need to keep in my collection. But it's a very short series, one of my top short romance series of all time, so I highly recommend you check this out. Another series that's on the train of, it was a great series, but not a rereadable series for me personally, A Story of 7 Lives, the complete manga collection. This is volumes 1 to 3. This story follows a cat as he goes through the turmoils of life, being abandoned, going through living outside his relationship with humans. Very, very introspective, very interesting, especially as a cat owner. As I read through the story, I thought it was very well written. The art is fantastic, but yet again, I finished the story and I went, okay, that was great. I'm not going to reread it. Here is a dumpster fire of a first volume. One, I couldn't even bother to try the second volume, even if you paid me to, which in this circumstance, it could have possibly been that way. We have this Shuinji Family Children Volume 1. Now, you may recognize the cover art, and that's because this is from the same mangaka as Rent a Girlfriend, and it follows these family members here. They're all teenagers. They're growing up in this household together, and there's a big twist by the father, and all their whole worlds get turned upside down. You can probably figure out the twist with these siblings here on the cover, but what I will say is it got super weird, super fast. It went nosedive into some really weird incestual things, and I was like, no, I'm done. These next two series here are from the same mangaka, Momoko Koda. This is No Longer Heroine. I read volumes 1 to 5. This is a true dumpster fire of a series. It's supposed to make you emotionally mad. The main characters are absolutely awful. They're just nothing you should aspire to be, and it's just a really kind of make you feel bad story for all the characters involved, and it's just not something I really want to keep reading. But what I will say is that it will hook you because you just want to see where these characters go because they're just so despicable. And the other series by Kodo Sensei is My Special One, volumes 1 to 3. I thought volume 1 was actually really interesting. It was following this girl here who despises idols and everything they stand for, and this idol boy here who comes into her life, and they build this interesting friendship. And then volume 2 kind of concluded everything that was presented in volume 1, and then I was like, well, where does the story have to go from here? And then it took a couple twists and turns into a direction I really didn't like, which I knew was going to happen, and then I was like, okay, I can see where this story is going, and it's not going to be anything like I think it's going to be, so we're done with this. I mean, I'll be completely honest with you, if this was just a 2-volume series, I think this could actually be pretty decent, but because they kept going with it, it's just not good. Next up here is volumes 1 to 3 of Handyman Saito in Another World. This is an isekai series following a handyman who gets isekai'd into this fantasy world. This is a parody of fantasy. It just goes through all these jokes as these characters go through this fantasy world together. They're just like little shticks and things like that. There is no linear story whatsoever, and I felt like the actual handyman shtick was really never used. The main character is basically forgotten about, and I just didn't enjoy it whatsoever. A short series here, we have volumes 1 to 3 of Sunbeams in the Sky. It follows 2 identical twins, and they switch places with each other as one goes to school to cover for the other one, and then some drama ensues. I really enjoyed volume 1. I actually haven't finished this series, but I know that this is going to be series. I'm going to finish reading it and I'll go, okay, it was good, time to offload it. So yes, I am prepared to finish this series this month before I offload it. Next up here is the Chitin Books volume 1 section. We have Loner Life in Another World volume 1, Uzumade volume 1, Welcome to the Outcast Restaurant Volume 1, My Dad's the Queen of All VTubers Volumes 1 and Volume 2. We have Shed That Skin Ryogasaki-san Volume 1, and as well as Gacha Girls Core Volume 1. Were any of these series bad? No, not necessarily. They were average to pretty good at best. But with all of these, it was more of a thing of I need space, and these aren't things that I'm gonna be picking up in the future. If I do want to read them digitally, I will, but they're just taking up real estate that I just don't have. Honestly, if you're interested in checking out any of these, I recommend My Dad's the Queen of All VTubers, a short 3-volume series that was absolutely hilarious, and Gacha Girls Core. This is a fantasy world setting, but with a gacha element in it, so if you're a fan of gacha games, this was actually pretty fun. Next up is an out-of-print series from Bandai, but one I knew that I wasn't planning to collect, and I just have many other slice of life series in this realm that I could just read and be more easily accessible, and that is Lucky Star Volumes 1 to 5. Like series like Kinoro Mosaic and Azumango Daioh, this is a 4-coma slice of life school life series, and just because it's out of print, very expensive to find, and I just don't need it in my collection. I can find my enjoyment of this type of series from other places, which is why I'm getting rid of it. 2 Yuri series from the same mangaka, Mikanuji. We have Assorted Entanglements Volumes 1 to 3, and also their short story collection, I Don't Need a Happy Ending. In regards to I Don't Need a Happy Ending, I thought that the actual stories themselves were relatively interesting, but I felt like this is just a platform to do some weird Yuri sexual things, and then I just wasn't a big fan of how any of these stories finished, to be honest with you. And with Assorted Entanglements, it was a fine Yuri series, but because it was an episodic series, there's no linear storytelling between all of our characters that are loosely connected with each other. I just felt like I was just being jerked around in terms of the Yuri part of this, and I just couldn't get invested into the characters, so it had to go after 3 volumes. Next up is Volumes 1 to 3 of Saving 80,000 Gold in Another World for My Retirement. This was just so weird. This first volume made no sense, and it also progressed super slowly. They were setting up the world building, but I had no interest in the world building at all. I had no investment into the main character, and I could care less about where this series goes. Next up is Volumes 1 to 2 of The Illustrated Guide to Monster Girls. I never really gave this series a chance. It follows a group of monster girls in the lowest class in their monster school, and they're trying to up their class rank, but you know, when I say I didn't give it a chance, I gave it like a chapter, and then I fell asleep while I was reading it because it was just so word heavy and so slow, and I never bothered to read it again. And in my mind, I just know that even if I did try to give it another chance, I just wouldn't care for it. Here's a short 4-volume series. We have Mons Taboo. This is a really fun romance shonen battle action series. I actually think that the world itself is really interesting, following these people who kill these monsters who have perverted natures to them, and they turn into monsters, and then there's like this interesting dynamic between our main characters as they try to find solace within each other. Seems a little creepy at first, but then I think as the story progresses, it's actually pretty well done. A very fun short 4-volume series, but not one that I will bother to reread. Here's a terrible rom-com series, one that I do not recommend. Volumes 1 to 2 of Love's in Sight. If you don't like The Girl Who Forgot Her Glasses, if you don't like disjointed 4-coma manga, if you don't like repeated shticks over and over and over again, then definitely don't pick up this manga because it has all those things. Here's an interesting volume 1 to say the least. We have volume 1 of My Cute Little Kitten. Yes, look at that. It's a beautiful little kitten. What could go wrong? And it was basically the kitten was a catalyst for the mangaka to go, oh, let me get you in here and show you a bunch of Yuri sexual things. Yes, I do like that it's an older setting and they're trying to get their new life together and moving in together for the first time, but it just wasn't one that I wanted to keep reading. Here's a series that I was shocked and sad that I didn't like because it's pretty critically acclaimed by the same mangaka who does March Comes in Like a Lion. We have Honey and Clover Volume 1. This is basically an older version of Rainbow Days following male protagonists, but it's just not very well done. There are some characters I could absolutely care less for, and I think that the story itself was not very engaging, especially with our main female characters. So yeah, this one wasn't my cup of tea. Another volume 1 I was disappointed in was The Invisible invisible man and his soon-to-be wife. This is from the same mangaka who does The Country Without Humans, which I actually enjoy a lot, but I felt like the relationship itself was one that was not interesting and I could care less for it. Another volume 1 I could care less for. We have Madaka Kurua is impervious to my charms. This is volume 1 here. And what can I say about this one? The main character girl was insufferable. I did not care for her whatsoever, and I could tell that this was an episodic manga that was going to be really boring, and the shtick was going to be really boring after like 2 or 3 volumes, so I just had to drop it. A 3-volume completed series here. We have What This World Is Made Of. It follows these guys who download this app to make more money, and they're attacking monsters who manifest themselves based on human emotions and human turmoil. It was an interesting premise with a terrible execution, especially the ending. It was a huge info dump of new characters and new ideas that never got resolved. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad I read it, I guess, but definitely not keeping it. Here's another shoujo series I was disappointed in. Hi, I'm a witch and my crush wants me to make a love potion, volumes 1 to 3. I had some big problems with the storytelling here. I thought it was moving super slow, and I could care less about our 2 main characters and where they're gonna go from here. They seem super shallow, at least the main character male. I actually think that the witch herself is pretty interesting, but yeah, definitely controversial, one that a lot of people like, but I just personally don't. Next up here is volumes 1 to 3 of Coffee Moon. I just absolutely despise this series at the 3rd volume. I thought it was really interesting, following this girl who is in this Groundhog Day type of thing, and she's trying to discover this mystery. We get to volume 3, it wraps up the first part of the arc, and I was like, wow, this is actually pretty cool, and then it's like a whole different story, and I just was not down for the direction, so it had to go. Next up is a short boys love series, Manner of Death, volume 1 and 2. Very short series. The mystery wraps up about a quarter of the way through the 2nd volume. I thought it was pretty well done, and then it kept going, and that was a direction that I don't know why they took it, why they continued the story to go on for the last 75%. Should have just finished right when the mystery ended, and then it got kind of weird and nothing made sense, and I didn't really care for it. No, and I don't even care to read the mystery either again, so we're getting rid of it. A shoujo series that a lot of people like, but I just really couldn't get into is this Last Game, volumes 1 and 2. I read these first 2 volumes. It follows these 2 main characters who are trying to best each other, or at least this main character male is trying to best her. She really doesn't care, and I just thought that the first 2 volumes were fine. It felt like a Kaguya-sama type of thing, but just not with a cast of characters that I can get down with, so that's why this one is getting offloaded. Next up is a manga adaptation of a light novel. Apparently, disillusioned adventurers will save the world. The Ultimate Party is Born, volumes 1 to 3. I thought it was just fine. It was a fun fantasy setting. The characters actually have a little bit of personality to them, but in terms of something that's just gonna blow my mind and be a nice staple in the collection, this is just one that I just don't need to keep. But for those of you who are curious, it follows these group of characters. They all get kicked out of their respective parties or backstabbed for one reason or the other, and then they all come together to form this ragtag team. Here's volumes 1 to 5 of a series I didn't even know existed by Hiromu Arakawa. This is the same mangaka who did Full Metal Alchemist, Silver Spoon, The Heroic Legend of Arslan. We have Hero Tales. This is their lowest rated series on my anime list, but one I was intrigued to pick up. I got it for a great price, and then it just sat in my collection, and then I was going through my collection, I was like, I didn't even realize that I had this, nor do I have a desire to read this. And considering I've ingested Arakawa Sensei's work in anime format, and I want to ingest it in manga format because I do have some of her other series in my collection, this is just going to be on the back burner for a long time. Next up is volume 1 of From the Red Fog. This is a short series, but one I could care less about. It follows this boy who grew up in the dark cellar. He finally gets out of it, but he's all messed up, so it's him in 19th century Europe doing bad things. I just never appealed to me. These next 2 series are Yuri series. First up is Azumi-chan is interested in lesbian brothels, volumes 1 to 3. Despite the cover, this is actually a pretty well-written story following this girl who's trying to find her childhood friend, yet she goes at it through going through lesbian brothels. I don't know, interestingly enough. Yes, it is hovering on the border of the H, but it was actually pretty intriguing, but one that after the 3rd volume, I was like, I probably just shouldn't keep this in my collection. The other Yuri series here is Superwoman in Love, Honey Trap, and Rapid Rabbit, volume 1. This is one that I picked up in my little friends are buying my manga haul type of video that I did. And what will I say about this one? I actually thought that this was a pretty interesting perspective on the Yuri genre, especially considering that there's a superhero aspect to it. I thought it was actually pretty cool, but as I continue to look at my collection and figure out which ones are going to be staples in my collection and how I want to downsize, this is one that's definitely going to be part of that downsizing. And 2 Tokyo Pop series I really know nothing about, nor do I have a desire to collect any of them. Maybe I'll read them eventually, but until then I'm just going to keep trying to offload it until that happens. We have Hanako and the Terror of Allegory Volume 1, as well as Burst Angel Volume 1. I have no clue what these series are about. I don't even know if they're any good, so just let me know if you think that these are ones that I should attempt to read. And that is it for my Manga Unhaul, a huge purge of the collection. I am very reprieved that I did this. I also got a ton of money from doing this, and I made up a ton of room in my collection to keep adding stuff to my collection. I have actually picked up several series on Manga Swap in the last week that are going to be added into my collection because of me creating more space, which is a huge bonus. Series that I've really wanted to add to my collection, which is a big plus. As always, if you enjoy the content of my videos, make sure you hit that like button, tap the subscribe button, and hit that notification bell so that you know when more of my videos come out, and I will see you in the next one. Take care now. Bye-bye.